So today we're going to start tapping trees. So in order to do that, this line here we just put in. This is a new line, so it's going to also have to be drilled. What you're going to need to start with is a tap. This is a pretty good sized tree, so I'm going to put 2 taps in it. Need a little piece of tubing. This tubing is 5/16 inch tubing, and that's what most of the taps are when you put them together or put them on. So you just put that together. I put these ahead of time so I have them, but this tube here will always somewhat change depending on where your hole is in the line, so I cut these as I do them. So now these taps here are a 5/16. They're called a tree saver. You don't need as big of a hole to put these in. The other ones are 7/16, so you need a bigger bit in order to drill those in. This is just a little 5/16 inch bit. So what I need to do is first, since this is new, I haven't tapped this yet, so I need to slowly go through and just put a hole in my tubing here. You want to go really slow, don't push on it, because a lot of times I don't do it too much anymore because I'm used to it. But when I first started using this tubing, what I did was push on it kind of hard, and then it would go right through and drill a hole right through the bottom, and then your sap just runs right out the bottom. So I have that. Then what I do is I just take another tap like that, and then I put it on the bottom of this tube like that, and then that I just push right into that tube, and then I can tap my tree. Now this is the first time we're tapping this tree, so you want to make sure that you start your taps where you're going to have room to tap, for the next 5-10 years. Probably not 10 years, but you want them far enough apart where next year now you can go like here or over here. You want your taps, you don't want them all in a row across, like drill here every year. You want them, some to go up, some to go below. You want them at least 1 inch to 1/2 inch apart from year to year. And what that does is, because once you drill that hole, the tree is going to go ahead and fill that in, but the sap lines in the wood are actually going to go around that hole, because they won't the sap won't continue to go right across that hole any longer. Once you drill it, it'll seal off. So the sap needs to go around that. So if you keep drilling holes here, and they're really close together, eventually the sap just won't get through. So you want to change it from year to year. The other thing on this tree is, if you look on the back side here, there's a little bit of moss growing on the back side of the tree and across the bottom. But on this side of the tree, what the moss is telling me is that the sun doesn't hit this side of the tree very much. So eventually, if you tap this tree for a long time, you're not going to have enough surface up here where the sun is hitting in order to drill your holes. So eventually you might drill back here. I try to stay away from these because, like I said, the sun doesn't hit this, so it doesn't warm up quite as much, so not as much sap is going to be running through that. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start like right next to where the algae almost is. I take my bit. I'm going to go a little bit at an angle. So I'm just going to go in at an angle and then stop. So I got a piece of tubing on my drill bit on how far I want to go in. I just give it a tap, and then I do the same thing over here. Drill it at a little bit of an angle, come back out, put the tap in, and give it a tap. Now that tree's done, so you can go to the next tree now. And these stay in, and then after the season, pull them out, clean them up. One thing I did find on some of mine, when I pull them out too early and they're still dripping, I've had issues with like ants getting in them and actually, working the way through the tree. So people sometimes plug these. What I actually do is, even after the season, is I'll leave these taps in, for another month or two, even after the season. That way the tree has got it pretty well healed up and you can just pull it out, and then there's no sap coming out of it for the bugs and ants to get into it. So I'm gonna go down to the next tree, but I did see over here one thing that I wanted to mention. This tree here was scarred probably from hauling, you know, this used to be an old skidder trail that came up here and they'd skid logs out of here. This tree's way too small to tap anyway, but now a scar like this, you want to watch for those because you don't want to tap above it. You're not going to want to tap in here, so you're going to want to tap off to one side once the time comes. You also want to look higher up and make sure there's not that kind of scarring up above. A tree, when they get injured like that, they have to reroute their sap veins through the wood. So this is almost like dead wood in there now, but this is all alive here yet. So this might end up eventually, when it gets bigger, grow and cover that. You'll never know it. But like I said, a tree like that, you just don't want to tap above it because it is stressed enough where it has to go around that already. So I just thought I'd point that out as long as I saw it over here. But now I'm just going to work the rest of the way down this line and finish tapping these up. And I just thought I'd show you the first one, how we put it in and how that works. Yeah, I get most of all my equipment from Maple Hollow. There's other companies out there, but I've just been dealing with them lately. The other thing is a lot of people put like what they call a main line. This is what I consider my main line, but I run this from tree to tree. A lot of people will put like one big, like an inch or a 2-inch line, and then they'll run like that tubing from tree to tree into this line. I was kind of doing that, but the squirrels really like to chew up that tubing. So even halfway through the season, I was having squirrels like chewing up, and then you'd end up losing whatever trees you had on that. So now I just go from tree to tree with it. You know, I'm not tapping every single tree in the woods here, so it's a lot easier for me to run this line. Once in a while, I'll have squirrels that actually will chew this up, but then I just patch it. Usually it's if a tree falls down and kind of is laying next to it, a squirrel will come up and chew on it. I've also had deer that'll, like if a tap comes loose, they'll end up chewing the ends of the tap off because they like the taste of the sweet sap. But anyway, I'm gonna head on down and I'll have Aiden pick me up at the bottom. That way I don't have to come back up here to get the equipment. So it's a lot easier to work with 2 people. That way you're not walking up and down, because that is a pretty steep hill. So I'm gonna head on out and we'll talk later.
I just got down here and the sap was running, so I got a quick string tied to it, get it in the barrel, because it was just running out on the ground. It's running pretty good. And we don't even have all the trees tapped on this line yet. My dad's tapping them right now. Like all of these they're not even tapped yet. The sap's just running down from the top.
Yeah, so this is how we ended up plumbing these in together. So now the sap is coming down the hill. It's gonna come into here. Once it gets to this T, it drops down into this barrel. I don't know if I can be quiet long enough. You can maybe hear it running in there. but that's what it's doing, is just dripping in there. So with it dripping in there, and then once it fills up to that point, it should just run right over and go into this tote and fill this tote up secondary. But it shouldn't go until that one's actually full. So, well, that's probably it for today. We're gonna start putting everything back into the Kubota and head up to the truck. Started at the top. I started with 30, got halfway down to where that other tote would have been, and then Aiden gave me another 30 halfway down, so I'd have enough to make it down to the bottom, and then he comes down here to pick me up so we don't have to walk back to the top. So out of that, we ended up with 22 taps left over, so that means there is 38 trees that were tapped on that line. Most of them have 2 taps, so that would be equivalent of 76 actual taps in the trees. I did do a few singles, some trees that were a little smaller, some that didn't look quite as healthy. So I passed up some, and then there's like 2 with only 1 tap in them. So thank you for watching part 4 of maple syrup season. It's real muddy today, as you can tell. The Kubota's splashed with mud, but we have to head home and start washing up stuff in order to start transporting the sap. We'll have a couple totes on the back there that we can fill up with the pump, and then we take it home and put it into a 500-gallon bulk tank to get ready to be boiled off. So we're gonna head home and wash this up and get ready for tomorrow.